The mistake that changed everything. The planet Velos Prime was a city of endless lights and shadows. Neon signs flickered across metal towers, while the streets below were dark and cold. People walked fast, their eyes down, afraid of the hidden dangers. In this world of secrets, a man named Elias Kane hunted his target. Elias Kane was no ordinary man. He was a human mercenary known across the galaxy as the Reaper of Titanus. Cold, efficient, deadly. His name brought fear, especially to aliens who remembered the Titanus War. Elias had fought there, leaving behind burned cities and broken armies. He never asked questions about his jobs. He only followed orders. Tonight, his mission was simple: find and kill an alien prince. Elias crouched on the rooftop of an old building. His rifle was silent and deadly, scanning the street below. The target was a Zerithian prince named Caliph. The Zerithians were a proud alien race with pale blue skin, glowing amber eyes, and ridged crests on their heads. Elias had killed many like them before. They were enemies. This prince was just another job. His earpiece crackled. Target confirmed. Moving west, near the old market, said Tirik, his team leader. End it, Kane. No mistakes. Elias moved across the rooftop, silent like a shadow. Through his scope, he saw the prince. Caliph looked young, maybe 16, with a thin build and nervous eyes. He wore a dark cloak, trying to hide, but the glowing crest on his head betrayed him. Elias lined up the shot, finger resting on the trigger. "Goodbye, kid," Elias whispered. Then something unexpected happened. Screams echoed from a nearby alley. A small Zerithian child ran out, chased by two armed thugs. The child tripped and fell, crying. Caliph turned his head toward the noise. The prince hesitated, then ran to the child. Elias adjusted his aim, confused. Caliph knelt beside the child, shielding him with his body. The thugs shouted something, aiming their blasters. The prince raised his hands, voice trembling but strong. "Leave the child alone," Caliph said. "He's done nothing." The thugs laughed and raised their weapons. Without thinking, Elias moved. His sniper rifle hissed twice. The thugs collapsed, lifeless. Caliph stared at the bodies, then looked up toward the rooftops. He couldn't see Elias, but he knew someone had saved him. Elias froze. He had broken the rules. He saved the target. "Kane, what the hell are you doing?" Tirik's voice exploded in his earpiece. "You had a clear shot. Kill the prince. Now." Elias aimed again. His finger trembled on the trigger. Caliph hugged the child, whispering soft words to calm him. The prince didn't look like a dangerous enemy. He looked like a scared boy trying to do the right thing. "No," Elias said softly. "What did you say?" Tirik barked. "I said no," Elias answered. "I'm not killing him." There was silence on the comm. Then Tirik's voice returned, cold and sharp. "You just signed your death warrant, Kane." The comm link cut off. Elias cursed and slung his rifle over his shoulder. He slid down a metal ladder to street level. Caliph turned as Elias approached, eyes wide with fear. "Stay back," the prince said. "I'm not here to hurt you," Elias said, lowering his weapon. "But we need to move. Right now. My team will come for both of us." "Why?" Caliph asked, stepping back. "You're a mercenary. You're supposed to kill me." "I changed my mind," Elias said. "Now run." Blaster shots crackled through the air. The child screamed. Elias grabbed Caliph's arm and pulled him into the alley. Behind them, figures in dark armor appeared. Elias recognized them, his former teammates. "Go left," Elias shouted. They ran through narrow passages, footsteps echoing behind them. Caliph tripped, but Elias caught him. The child had vanished in the chaos. Elias felt guilt, but survival came first. Blaster fire scorched the walls around them. They'd reached a dead end, a high metal fence. "Climb," Elias ordered. Caliph scrambled up. Elias turned and fired back, hitting one enemy in the chest. Another shot grazed his shoulder, burning his jacket. He gritted his teeth and climbed after Caliph. They dropped onto the other side. Elias saw a cargo transport idling nearby, its pilot missing. He shoved Caliph inside and jumped into the pilot's seat. The engine hummed beneath his hands. Teetering appeared across the street, rifle raised. He aimed directly at Caliph. Elias slammed the accelerator. The transport shot forward as Teetering fired. The blast shattered the windshield, missing Caliph by inches. The transport sped through the streets toward the distant spaceport. Elias's hands shook on the controls. Caliph sat beside him, breathing fast. "Why did you save me?" the prince asked. Elias didn't answer. He didn't know the answer himself. The comm crackled again. Teering's voice returned, soft and menacing. "You made a mistake, Kane," Teetering said. "We'll find you. And when we do, the boy dies. And so do you." The transmission ended. Elias tightened his grip on the controls. He had broken the rules for the first time in his life. He had spared an alien prince. And now, the galaxy would hunt them both. The deadly chase begins. The stolen cargo transport raced through the dark streets of Velos Prime. Neon signs reflected off the cracked windshield as Elias Kane gripped the controls with white-knuckled hands. The engine roared beneath them, but it wasn't fast enough. The enemy was close. Beside him, Prince Caliph sat stiff and silent. His pale blue skin shimmered faintly in the dim light. His amber eyes stayed fixed on the rear camera display, watching the shadowy figures chasing them. "They're gaining," Caliph whispered. "I know," Elias answered, voice tight. "Hold on." The transport jolted as Elias made a sharp turn, tires screeching. Behind them, two sleek pursuit drones followed, glowing red like predatory eyes. The drones fired thin plasma beams. The beams sliced through metal street signs and scorched the pavement near the wheels. Elias's heart pounded. His former team was using advanced gear, too advanced for a simple assassination mission. This wasn't just a job gone wrong. Something bigger was at play. The comm crackled again. Teering's voice filled the cabin. "Kane, you can't run forever. You're protecting an alien, remember? The same kind that bombed Titanus. You haven't forgotten Titanus, have you?" Elias clenched his jaw. The memory of Titanus was a deep scar on his mind. Burning cities, dead friends, endless screams. The Zerithians had started that war, but Elias had helped end it with brutal efficiency. He glanced at Caliph. The boy's hands shook as he gripped the seat. He didn't look like the enemy. He looked like a terrified kid. "You're wasting your time," Elias said into the comm. "You'll never get the prince." Teetering chuckled. "You're right, Kane. We won't get him. You'll hand him over. Sooner or later." The line went dead. The drone fired again. Plasma hit the back left tire. The transport swerved violently. Elias fought the controls, but the vehicle spun out, crashing into a row of metal crates. Smoke filled the cabin. "Out. Now," Elias shouted. He kicked open the door and dragged Caliph out. They sprinted toward a nearby maintenance tunnel. Behind them, the drones hovered overhead like silent predators. "Faster, kid," Elias urged. They reached the tunnel entrance. Elias pulled out his blaster and fired at the control panel. The metal door slammed shut behind them, just as the drones fired, sending sparks flying across the tunnel walls. Darkness swallowed them. Caliph coughed. "Where are we?" "Old sewer maintenance system," Elias said, activating a dim wrist light. The tunnel stretched into blackness. The air smelled of rust and stale water. "Where does it lead?" Caliph asked. "Spaceport," Elias said. "If we make it, we get off this rock." They ran through the tunnel, footsteps echoing. Elias's mind raced. Teetering had said too much. This was never just about killing the prince. They wanted Caliph alive, Or rather, they wanted him captured. Why do they want you so bad? Elias asked as they jogged. Caliph hesitated. I know something. Something dangerous. Yeah. What? My uncle, Lord Savrik, is planning a war, Caliph said, voice shaking. He killed my father and blamed humans. He's going to attack the Unity Council with stolen human weapons. If he succeeds, the galaxy will burn. Elias slowed. Wait, you're saying your uncle killed your father? Caliph nodded. He wants total control of the Zerithian Empire. And he wants me dead because I have proof. Proof of what? Caliph reached into his cloak and pulled out a small crystal about the size of a thumb. It glowed softly with blue light. Everything's on here, Caliph said. Messages, plans, weapon shipments. If I can get this to the Unity Council, we can stop him. Elias exhaled slowly. You're carrying a death sentence, kid. I know, Caliph said. The ground rumbled beneath their feet. Elias's instincts screamed danger. He turned back toward the tunnel entrance. The wall exploded. Chunks of concrete flew through the air. Elias shielded Caliph with his body as hot debris rained down. Through the dust, figures appeared, dark shapes with glowing visors. Tarek led the way, holding a heavy blaster. Told you, Kane. You'd bring him right to us. Run, Elias shouted. Caliph sprinted ahead. Elias fired at the attackers, forcing them to take cover. He followed Caliph into the darkness. They emerged from the tunnel near the spaceport's southern fence. Beyond it, ships of all sizes lifted into the sky. The fence was electrified, buzzing with blue energy. Get down, Elias ordered. Caliph dropped as Elias shot a power conduit nearby. The fence crackled and went dark. Go, go, go. Elias pushed Caliph through the gap. He followed just as plasma fire struck the ground beside him. The spaceport was chaos. Ships came and went, crews shouting in dozens of languages. Elias scanned the area and spotted an old freighter preparing for launch. There, he pointed. They sprinted toward the freighter. Tarek and his men emerged from the tunnel, firing wildly. Civilians screamed and scattered. A plasma bolt hit Elias in the side. Pain ripped through him, but he didn't stop. They reached the freighter's loading ramp. The pilot shouted something in an alien language. Security check, the pilot yelled. Elias shot into the air. Emergency requisition. Military priority. The pilot hesitated, then backed away. They climbed the ramp. Elias hit the close button. The door sealed shut. The engines roared to life. Outside, Tarek fired a tracking beacon at the ship's hull. It stuck with a metallic thunk. The freighter lifted off, engines burning bright. Inside the cockpit, Elias slumped against the wall, breathing hard. His side burned with every breath. Caliph sat beside him, clutching the data crystal like a lifeline. They'll follow us, Caliph said softly. Yeah, Elias answered. But next time, we'll be ready. Far below, Tarek watched the ship vanish into the clouds. He activated his comm. Tag secured, Tarek said. They're running, but not for long. The voice on the other end was cold and unfamiliar. Good. Let them run. The Reaper always returns to the battlefield, and when he does, we'll be waiting. Trust amid the stars. The freighter rattled as it broke through Velos Prime's atmosphere. The ship's hull creaked under the strain, metal groaning like a wounded beast. Elias Kane sat in the co-pilot's seat, sweat dripping down his face. His side burned from the plasma wound, and every breath was sharp and shallow. You're bleeding, Caliph said softly from the other seat. His amber eyes were wide with fear. I'm fine, Elias lied. His hand pressed against the wound, feeling the sticky warmth of his own blood. Just keep watching the scanner. We need to know if someone follows. Caliph nodded and tapped the worn control panel. The scanner flickered, displaying a messy radar grid. The boy squinted at the unfamiliar human technology. I think we're alone." "We're not," Elias said grimly. "Turek always plays smart. He tagged us, I'm sure of it." The ship shuddered as it entered open space. The view beyond the cockpit window stretched into endless stars. Velos Prime shrank into a distant marble below. For a moment, there was silence, just the quiet hum of the engines and the vast emptiness of the void. Elias set the autopilot and leaned back with a low groan. "Where are we going?" Caliph asked. "Out of here," Elias said. "We'll find a quiet spot to lay low. Get me that med kit from the side panel." Caliph jumped up and retrieved the kit. His hands trembled as he opened it and passed it to Elias. The boy watched as Elias bit down on a cloth and pressed a cauterizing patch against the wound. The device hissed, burning the flesh closed. Elias's muscles tensed, veins bulging with pain. When it was done, he slumped back, breathing hard. "Does it hurt?" Caliph asked. Elias gave a dry laugh. "Yeah, a lot." Caliph sat down again, eyes fixed on the stars. "Why did you save me?" Elias rubbed his face. He had asked himself the same question 100 times since that moment. He didn't have a clean answer. "I guess I saw something I didn't expect. You protected that kid back there. Risked your life. Royals don't usually do that." "My father taught me to protect the weak," Caliph said softly. "That's why he died. He stood against my uncle's plan for war. He wanted peace." Elias's stomach twisted. The words stirred something buried deep. The memory of burning cities, dead civilians, and the smell of ash from the Titanus War. He had followed orders back then, believing it was the right thing. Now he wasn't so sure. "We need to stay alive long enough to prove it," Elias said, pushing those thoughts away. "We'll go to Zarna Station. It's a neutral trading hub, no official records, and plenty of places to hide. Maybe we can find someone who can help us." "Can we trust anyone?" Caliph asked. "No," Elias said, "but we can try." Hours later, Zarna Station. Zarna Station floated like a rusted giant in the middle of empty space. It was a patchwork of metal platforms, old cargo bays, and forgotten technology. The station had no laws, only deals made in shadows. Smugglers, bounty hunters, and mercenaries called it home. Elias docked the ship in a maintenance bay and shut down the engines. He opened a compartment beneath the pilot's seat and pulled out a small pulse pistol, handing it to Caliph. "Keep this with you," Elias said. Caliph hesitated. "I've never used a weapon before." "Hope you won't have to," Elias said. "Safety's here. Trigger here. Aim for the legs or arms if you can. We're not here to start a war." Caliph's fingers closed around the weapon, though his hands shook. Elias felt a pang of guilt. The kid shouldn't have to learn how to fight, but survival didn't care about childhood. They stepped out of the ship into the bay. The air was thin and cold, tasting of metal and recycled oxygen. The sounds of grinding machines and distant arguments filled the space. "Stay close," Elias whispered. Caliph stuck to his side as they moved through the crowded station corridors. Every few steps, Elias scanned their surroundings. He didn't see Turek or his team, but that didn't mean they weren't nearby. They reached an old bar with a flickering neon sign that read The Hollow Moon. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the sharp scent of alien drinks. Strange creatures crowded the room. Reptilian Serakians with shimmering scales, broad-shouldered Gravarn with tusks like swords, and shadow-eyed Lyrians who spoke in whispers. A woman sat alone at the back table. Rena Voss. She wore a dark jacket, her hair in a tight braid, a scar running down her left cheek. "Who is she?" Caliph whispered. "An old friend," Elias said, "or at least she used to be." They approached the table. Rena looked up, her sharp eyes locking onto Elias. "Elias Kane," she said, voice cold. "Haven't seen you since Titanus. Thought you were dead." "Almost was," Elias said, sitting down. Caliph sat beside him, his small frame tense. "Need your help." "Help?" Reyna smirked. "Last time you needed help, half a city burned." "This is different," Elias said. "We need safe passage to Unity Council space. Got a kid here with information that might stop a war." Reyna's eyes shifted to Calith. "Zerethian royalty. You're punching above your pay grade, Kane. Can you help us or not?" Elias asked. Reyna leaned back, drumming her fingers on the table. "I can get you a ship. Fake IDs, but it'll cost you." Elias reached into his jacket and slid a credit chip across the table. "Half now, half when we get there." Reyna smiled faintly. Still a gambler. She pocketed the chip. "Dock 47. Ship leaves in 2 hours." Elias stood and nodded to Calith. "Let's go." As they walked away, Calith whispered, "Can we trust her?" Elias didn't answer. Dock 47. 2 hours later. The new ship was a sleek, older model freighter. Elias scanned the hull for trackers but found none. The ship powered up easily. "Maybe we can finally breathe," Calith said as he buckled into the co-pilot seat. "Maybe," Elias muttered. The comm crackled to life. "Leaking so soon, Kane?" Tarek's voice filled the cabin. "We're already here." The door to the docking bay slammed shut. Alarm lights flashed red. The ship's controls went dead. Calith's eyes widened. "They trapped us," Elias cursed. He grabbed his rifle and moved toward the hatch. Outside, Reyna stood next to Tarek, a pistol in her hand. She gave Elias a mocking salute. "Sorry, Kane. Business is business." Tarek smiled through the comm. "Told you, Kane. The Reaper always comes back to the battlefield, and you brought us the prince like a good soldier." The ship shook as plasma drills began cutting through the hull. Elias turned to Calith, jaw tight. "We fight or we die, kid. No one's coming to save us." Calith swallowed hard and raised his pistol. "Let's fight." The betrayal. The plasma drills screeched against the hull, sending sparks flying across the freighter's metal floor. The sound was sharp and unforgiving, like claws dragging across steel. Elias Kane crouched near the cargo bay door, pulse rifle steady in his hands. His heart pounded in his chest, every instinct screaming that this was a trap they wouldn't escape. Across from him, Prince Calith crouched low, gripping his small pistol with both hands. His eyes were wide, his breath fast. "Stay calm, kid," Elias said softly, keeping his voice steady. "Focus on the target. Don't think about anything else." Calith gave a shaky nod. His small fingers flexed on the pistol grip. The plasma drills stopped. Silence followed, a deep predatory silence. Elias adjusted his rifle and activated the heat scanner on his visor. The wall showed 3 heat signatures moving in formation. Tarek's team. Professionals. They wouldn't rush in like amateurs. "Get ready," Elias whispered. The ship's hull groaned. A small circular section of the cargo bay wall hissed as it melted. The metal glowed red, then collapsed inward. Smoke poured through the hole. A small cylindrical object clattered to the floor. "Flash grenade," Elias shouted. The grenade exploded with blinding white light and a deafening bang. Elias shielded Calith with his body as the force hit them. His ears rang, and white spots danced in his vision. Dark figures rushed through the smoke. Elias fired on instinct. The rifle's pulse shots cracked through the air. One figure fell with a grunt. Another returned fire, plasma bolts slamming into the walls. The cargo bay filled with smoke and the bitter scent of burning metal. Calith fired wildly. The shots missed, but it kept the enemy distracted. "Elias," the boy screamed. Elias turned too late. A heavy boot slammed into his side, knocking him to the ground. His rifle skittered away. Tarek loomed above him, helmet visor glowing crimson. The mercenary kicked Elias in the ribs again. Pain exploded through Elias's torso. "Stay down, Kane," Tarek said, voice cold through his helmet speaker. You've lost. Keleth screamed and fired at Teetering. The shot hit the mercenary's shoulder, making him stumble. Elias used the moment. He lunged for his knife and slashed upward, cutting through Teering's armored joint. Teetering roared in pain and staggered back, clutching his bleeding arm. "Run!" Elias shouted at Keleth. Keleth bolted for the emergency exit hatch. Teetering aimed his pistol at the boy. Elias tackled Teetering, knocking the weapon aside. They fell hard, grappling for control. Teering's strength was brutal, but Elias fought with the desperation of a man who had nothing left to lose. Teetering headbutted him. The impact cracked Elias's nose and filled his vision with stars. Teetering rolled Elias onto his back and pinned him down. "You should have taken the shot on Velos Prime," Teetering growled. "Now it's too late." The mercenary raised his pistol. A shot rang out. Teetering jerked and collapsed to the floor. Smoke rose from the back of his helmet. Behind him stood Keleth, trembling, the pistol still smoking in his hands. Elias scrambled to his feet and grabbed Keleth's arm. "Good work. Now move." They ran through the side hatch into the docking bay. Alarms blared around them. Mercenaries swarmed the station, blocking the exits. "This way." Elias dragged Keleth toward a cargo lift. They jumped onto the lift just as plasma fire peppered the metal walls. Elias hit the controls, and the platform jerked upward. "Where are we going?" Keleth gasped. "Top level," Elias said. "Landing pads. If we can steal a ship, we can get out." The lift stopped on the upper level. The landing pads stretched before them, but guards patrolled every exit. Elias scanned the area. His eyes locked on a sleek black ship with no markings. "That one," Elias said. They ran toward it, weaving through crates. A guard spotted them and raised his weapon. Elias shot him twice. The ship's access panel glowed red. "Locked," Elias muttered. "Try this," Keleth said, pulling a small multi-tool from his pocket. "My father showed me how to override security locks." Elias stared at him. "You know how to hack a ship." Keleth gave a nervous shrug. "I learned some things." The boy knelt beside the panel, hands shaking. The lock interface flickered as he worked. Plasma bolts slammed into nearby crates. Elias returned fire, keeping the guards at bay. "Hurry, kid." "I'm trying." The lock clicked green. The ship's hatch hissed open. "Go." Elias pushed Keleth inside, then followed, slamming the door shut. The cockpit was small, with unfamiliar controls in alien script. "Can you fly this?" Keleth asked. "Let's find out," Elias muttered. He pressed the main ignition. The engines hummed to life. The ship vibrated beneath them. Outside, mercenaries aimed missile launchers at the hatch. "Brace," Elias shouted. The missiles streaked toward the ship. Elias slammed the launch thrusters. The ship roared upward. Explosions rocked the hull as the missiles struck below. They shot into open space, leaving Zarna Station behind. Hours later, drifting in space, the ship floated in the darkness of uncharted space. Elias had set the autopilot, and now sat slumped in the pilot's seat, breathing heavily. His wounds throbbed with each breath. Keleth sat on the floor beside him, hugging his knees. His hands still shook. "You saved me," Elias said quietly. "Back there, you shot Teetering." Keleth nodded without speaking. "That was your first kill," Elias said. The boy's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to. He was going to kill you." "I know," Elias said softly. "You did the right thing. But it still hurts the first time." Keleth wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. "Is it always like this?" "Yeah," Elias said. "But you saved us. You were brave when it counted." Keleth gave a shaky nod. "What now?" "We find someone who can help. The Unity Council won't believe us unless we have backup. Who can we trust?" Elias thought for a moment. "There's a planet called Haven Reach. Old war buddies of mine live there. People who hate politics but believe in peace will go there and figure out the next move. Keleth gripped the data crystal tightly. If my uncle succeeds, the war will kill billions. I have to stop him. We will, Elias said. Together. Keleth gave a faint smile. You're not what I expected from a human mercenary. And you're not what I expected from a prince, Elias said. The ship accelerated toward Haven Reach, leaving behind a trail of broken trust, blood, and unanswered questions. Far away, in a dark command room, Lord Savrik stood before a holographic display showing the stolen ship's trajectory. His pale blue skin glowed faintly under the light. Heading for Haven Reach, said a robotic voice. Savrik's lips curled into a thin smile. Send the hunters, he said. The boy will not escape again. The mercenaries resolve. The stolen ship hurtled through deep space, stars streaking past like frozen tears. Inside the cockpit, Elias Kane sat in the pilot's seat, jaw clenched as he stared at the glowing navigation display. The ship's destination blinked on the screen. Haven Reach. He hadn't been there in years. The planet was a forgotten world, a quiet place where soldiers of the Titanus War went to hide from their ghosts. And Elias had plenty of ghosts. Behind him, Keleth sat cross-legged on the floor, gripping the glowing blue data crystal in his hands. The boy hadn't spoken much since Zarna Station. Elias understood. Killing someone, especially for the first time, left scars that never truly healed. Elias adjusted the controls and turned to face the boy. You doing okay, kid? Keleth looked up, amber eyes dull with exhaustion. I keep seeing him. Tyrek. The way he fell. That's normal, Elias said. First time feels like that. Your brain keeps replaying it, trying to make sense of it. I didn't want to kill them, Keleth said, voice cracking. But I knew if I didn't, you'd die. I didn't even think. I just pulled the trigger. You did what you had to, Elias said. And you saved us both. Tyrek made his choices. You made yours. Don't let it eat you up. Keleth squeezed the crystal tighter. I thought being a prince meant big speeches and ceremonies. But now, I just feel like a soldier. Soldiers survive, Elias said. And right now, survival is what matters. The cockpit beeped softly. Elias checked the scanners. Haven Reach in 10 minutes, he said. Hope the locals still like me. Keleth frowned. Who are we meeting? Old war buddies, Elias said. People like me, soldiers who saw too much and walked away. They don't trust anyone. But if they trust me, maybe we get some help. The boy looked uncertain. And if they don't trust you? Elias smiled grimly. Then we're dead before we land. Approaching Haven Reach. Haven Reach was a green and blue world orbiting a pale yellow sun. From orbit, it looked peaceful, with thick forests and endless lakes. But beneath that calm surface lay secrets. Elias guided the ship toward the southern hemisphere, where an unmarked landing beacon flickered in the wilderness. The comm crackled. Unidentified ship, this is Haven Control. State your name and intent or be destroyed. Voice ID, Elias Kane, Elias said calmly. Authorization Delta 75 Charlie. Requesting safe harbor. Silence. Then a voice answered. Kane, you've got guts coming back here. Permission granted. Land at Grid 14. Elias exhaled. We're in. The ship descended through thick clouds, landing softly on a moss-covered platform hidden in a dense forest. The engines hissed as they cooled. Stay close to me, Elias said. No sudden moves. These people don't ask questions. They just shoot. Keleth's eyes widened, but he nodded. The hatch opened with a low hiss, and cooled, damp air filled the cabin. Outside, 5 armed figures waited. They wore mismatched armor, faces hidden by old military helmets. The tallest of the group stepped forward. She removed her helmet, revealing sharp features, short black hair, and eyes like cold steel. Welcome back, Kane, she said. Elias gave a half-smile. Good to see you too, Selene Vex. Selene's eyes flicked to Calith. You brought a prince to Haven Reach. The council won't like that. The council doesn't know yet, Elias said. And if we fail, they'll never know. Selene's jaw tightened. Come with me. You better explain everything. The safe house. Selene led them to a bunker hidden beneath the forest floor. The walls were reinforced steel, covered in old war maps and communication consoles. Other soldiers patrolled the perimeter, weapons always in reach. Elias sat down at the metal table, while Calith sat beside him, clutching the crystal. Selene stood across from them, arms crossed. Talk. Kid's father was Emperor Kauris, Elias began. Kauris tried to stop the warlords in his empire. His brother, Savrik, killed him and took power. Now Savrik's planning to frame humans for an attack on the Unity Council. If it works, humans and Zerethians will be at war again. Billions will die. Selene's eyes narrowed. You have proof. Calith placed the crystal on the table. Everything's here, he said softly. Weapon orders, fleet movements, communication logs. My father died trying to stop it. Selene picked up the crystal and inserted it into a projector. Blue light filled the room, displaying messages and schematics of massive plasma cannons and orbital strike platforms marked as human military surplus. The data showed doctored communications designed to blame Earth's defense fleet. Selene cursed. They're setting humanity up as the aggressors. If the Council believes this, they'll order an extermination war against Earth. Exactly, Elias said. We need to get this to Unity HQ. Selene shook her head. You won't make it there alive. Savrik has bounty hunters everywhere. He'll expect you to run to the Council. Then we need a different plan, Elias said. Selene paced the room. There might be a way, she said at last. We have a covert relay station deep in the mountains. Old tech, but it can broadcast directly to the Council's secure channels. If we send the data there, the Council will see it live. Perfect, Elias said. Where is it? Selene pointed to a map on the wall. 50 kilometers west, through rough terrain. We can give you a vehicle, but you'll be exposed the whole way. Then we'll move fast, Elias said. Selene's lips thinned. I'll go with you. We'll need every gun we can get. The journey through the mountains. The old armored vehicle rumbled through dense forests and rocky paths. Elias drove, eyes scanning for drones. Selene sat beside him, rifle ready. Calith sat in the back, face pale but determined. Hours passed without incident. The mountains loomed ahead, jagged and cold. The relay station beacon flickered faintly on their scanner. Almost there, Elias said. A high-pitched whine filled the air. Drones, Selene shouted. 3 sleek black drones swooped from the sky, firing plasma beams. Elias swerved the vehicle. The ground exploded beside them, showering the car with dirt and rocks. Selene leaned out the window and fired. One drone exploded in a burst of flame. Hang on. Elias spun the wheel hard, sending the vehicle skidding toward a narrow canyon. The drones followed. Calith, hand me the EMP launcher, Elias yelled. Calith grabbed the weapon from the backseat. It was heavy, with blinking blue lights along its barrel. Pointed at the drones and pulled the trigger. Elias ordered. Calith's hand shook, but he aimed at the closest drone. Fire, Elias shouted. Calith squeezed the trigger. A crackling blue pulse shot into the sky, hitting the lead drone. Electricity danced across its surface. The drone spun out of control and crashed into the canyon wall. Good shot, kid, Selene yelled. The last drone fired again. Plasma bolts struck the rear tires. The vehicle skidded and flipped. Elias braced himself as metal screamed and shattered glass filled the air. The vehicle slammed into the ground upside down. Elias groaned and unbuckled himself. Calith, Selene, you okay? I'm here, Calith coughed, crawling out of the wreckage. Selene groaned and clutched her bleeding leg. I can fight, she said through gritted teeth. The last drone hovered overhead, charging its plasma cannon. Cover me, Elias said. Celine opened fire, forcing the drone to dodge. Elias rolled out from under the vehicle and raised his rifle. The drone's cannon glowed, preparing to fire. Elias took a breath and squeezed the trigger. The rifle shot hit the drone's core. It exploded, raining debris across the canyon. Elias pulled Celine to her feet and grabbed Caleth's hand. The relay station's towers stood on a ridge ahead. Go, Elias shouted. They ran, lungs burning, until they reached the steel door of the station. Elias punched in the old code. The door groaned open. Inside, Caleth inserted the data crystal into the transmitter console. The screens lit up with lines of code. It's working, Caleth said breathlessly. The council is receiving it. Outside, engines roared. Elias peered through a crack in the wall. Black ships landed in the canyon. Armored soldiers poured out. At the center of the group stood Lord Savrik. His pale blue face was twisted into a cruel smile. Burn the station, Savrik ordered. Leave no survivors. Elias turned to Caleth. Kid, Elias said softly, you were brave before. Now we need you to be braver than ever. Caleth swallowed. What do we do? Elias checked his rifle and met Caleth's eyes. We fight, Elias said. The soldiers advanced, weapons raised. The battle for truth. The night air around the relay station crackled with tension. The faint hum of the transmitter filled the bunker, sending Caleth's message to the Unity Council across the stars. Outside, the low growl of approaching enemy soldiers echoed through the canyon. Elias Kane knelt beside the metal entrance, pulse rifle pressed against his shoulder. His heart beat slow and steady, honed by years of war. He stole a quick glance through the crack in the reinforced door. There were more of them than he'd hoped. 24 soldiers in dark armor, moving in perfect formation. Their rifles glowed with charged plasma rounds. At the center of the group stood Lord Savrik, his pale blue skin almost ghostly under the moonlight. His golden eyes gleamed with cold arrogance. Savrik raised his arm, and the soldiers halted. Prince Caleth, Savrik's voice crackled through an amplifier drone. You've caused enough trouble. Come out now, and I promise your death will be swift. Stay inside, and we'll burn you alive. Caleth sat beside the transmitter console. His face was pale, but his hand stayed firm on the controls. Transmissions at 60%, Caleth said, voice shaking. We need more time. Celine Vex leaned against the wall, blood seeping from the bandage on her leg. She checked her rifle's power cell with grim efficiency. 24 enemies, Elias muttered. We can't fight them all. We don't need to, Celine said. We just need to hold long enough to finish the transmission. Right, Elias said, adjusting his weapon. We delay, we survive. Caleth swallowed hard. What if the transmission doesn't go through in time? It will, Elias said. Because you made it this far, kid. We just need you to keep it running. The boy nodded and turned back to the controls. Elias peered through the crack again. Savrik paced slowly in front of his soldiers. You're a child, Caleth, Savrik called out. A scared boy playing hero. Your father was weak like you. He believed humans could be trusted. And where did that belief get him? Dead with a knife in his back. Caleth flinched. Elias's jaw tightened. Don't listen to him, he said softly. Caleth wiped his eyes and stared at the data screen. 70%. Savrik's voice sharpened. Do you know what your father said when I killed him, Caleth? He begged me to spare you. He pleaded for your life like a coward. I showed him mercy and gave him a quick death. I won't be so kind to you. Caleth's breathing quickened. His fingers trembled over the keys. Focus, Elias said, squeezing the boy's shoulder. He wants to break you. Don't let him. Caleth gave a shaky nod and continued typing. Outside, Savrik lowered his hand. Burn it down, he said. The siege begins. The soldiers raised their weapons. Plasma cannons mounted on their vehicles hummed as they charged. "Brace!" Elias shouted. The first blast hit the bunker's outer wall with a deafening boom. Concrete and steel cracked. The floor shook beneath them. The second blast followed, spraying hot debris across the room. "Wall integrity at 40%, Caliph called out. 75% uploaded. "Celine, cover fire," Elias barked. Celine limped to the firing slit and opened fire with precision bursts. Outside, soldiers ducked for cover as her shots struck two of them down. Elias moved to the opposite slit and fired a burst at the plasma cannons. His shots hit the power conduit of one cannon. It exploded, sending soldiers sprawling. "Nice shot," Celine said through gritted teeth. "Don't get used to it," Elias replied. A third blast shook the structure. The wall cracked further. Smoke and dust filled the room. "Plasma cutter team moving in," Celine shouted. Elias looked through the scope. 4 soldiers sprinted toward the entrance carrying a large handheld plasma cutter. "They'll breach in under 2 minutes," Celine said. Elias's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. He turned to Caliph. "How much longer?" Elias asked. "Upload at 80%, Caliph said. 2 more minutes." "Celine, cover the entrance. I'll deal with the cutter team." Elias grabbed 2 fragmentation grenades and crawled toward the side hatch. The plasma cutter whined as it sliced into the metal door. Sparks showered the ground. Elias pulled the pin on the first grenade and hurled it over the wall. It clattered on the ground near the soldiers. "Grenade!" One of the soldiers shouted. Too late. The grenade exploded, sending shrapnel through the squad. The plasma cutter team collapsed. But the plasma cannons roared again. The western wall buckled. "Wall's coming down," Celine shouted. The wall collapsed inward with a thunderous crack. 3 soldiers stormed through the opening. Elias opened fire, dropping the first attacker with a clean shot to the chest. Celine shot the second. The third lunged toward Caliph. "Kid, down," Elias shouted. Caliph ducked. Elias fired, but his rifle clicked empty. The soldier aimed at Caliph. Caliph squeezed his eyes shut and fired his pistol. The plasma bolt hit the soldier in the throat. The attacker fell, lifeless. Caliph stared at the smoking pistol, chest heaving. "Upload," Elias gasped. 94%, Caliph called out. "Almost there." Savrik's voice crackled over the comm again. "Enough games." The sky outside the shattered wall darkened. Elias looked up and froze. A black assault shuttle hovered above the canyon, its side doors open. A massive plasma cannon extended from its belly, glowing with charged energy. "Target the bunker," Savrik ordered. The cannon fired. The final stand. The plasma blast struck the bunker's roof. Concrete disintegrated. Metal melted. The roof partially collapsed, exposing the room to the open night. Celine screamed as debris pinned her leg. Elias grabbed Caliph and pulled him away from the falling rubble. The transmitter sparked but continued humming. "Upload at 99%, Caliph shouted. Savrik descended on a grav platform, flanked by 6 elite guards. He stepped into the smoking remains of the bunker. "End of the road, Kane," Savrik said, raising his pistol. Elias stood in front of Caliph, shielding the boy with his body. His rifle was empty. His knife was gone. Savrik smiled. "Such loyalty for an alien prince. I expected better from the Reaper of Titanus." "Yeah," Elias said. "I've been making mistakes lately." Savrik aimed his pistol at Elias's heart. "This is your last one." The transmitter console beeped. "Upload complete," Caliph whispered. Savrik's smile vanished. Elias's eyes locked with the boy's. "You did it, kid. Now get ready." "For what?" Caliph asked. Elias lunged. He tackled Savrik, driving his shoulder into the alien's chest. The pistol fired wildly, missing Caliph by inches. The guards opened fire. Plasma rounds scorched the air. Selene shot 2 guards before collapsing from blood loss. Elias punched Savrik across the jaw. The alien snarled and kicked Elias off him. Caliph dove for Selene's fallen rifle. His small hands found the trigger. Savrik stood and aimed at Elias. Caliph fired. The plasma bolt struck Savrik in the side. The alien howled and staggered back. Elias grabbed a broken rebar from the floor and rammed it through Savrik's chest. Savrik gasped, eyes wide with shock. You can't stop it. War will come. Maybe, Elias said, twisting the rebar. But not today. Savrik collapsed, lifeless. The remaining guards retreated, dragging their wounded away. Elias dropped to his knees. Blood soaked his side. His breath came in sharp gasps. Caliph knelt beside him. We did it. Elias smiled weakly. Yeah, kid. You saved the galaxy. Epilogue. 1 week later. The Unity Council broadcasted the stolen data across the galaxy. The conspiracy was exposed. Lord Savrik's forces surrendered. The war was averted. Elias woke in a hospital bed on Earth. His wounds were healing, but his spirit was exhausted. Caliph sat beside him, now dressed in royal robes. You made it, Caliph said with a grin. Didn't plan on dying just yet, Elias replied. The door opened. A council official entered. Mr. Kane, the official said, the council wishes to award you the Cross of Unity for your actions. Keep it, Elias said. Just let me go home. The official left. Caliph stood. I'm going to help rebuild the empire, make it what my father wanted. You'll do fine, kid, Elias said. Caliph hesitated. I never said thank you. You don't have to, Elias said. Stay strong, Prince. Caliph smiled and walked away. Elias closed his eyes. His comm beeped. A message displayed. New contract. Unknown enemy rising. Are you ready, Reaper? Elias sighed. Guess peace never lasts, he muttered. The legacy of the mistake. The stars above Earth shimmered like silent witnesses to the scars of war. From the window of the Unity Council medical station, Elias Kane watched those distant lights with a weary gaze. His body ached from the battle on Haven Reach. Plasma burns, broken ribs, and the deep, invisible weight of survival. His mistake had saved a prince. His mistake had stopped a war. And now his mistake was calling him back to the battlefield. The small comm unit on the bedside table blinked softly. Elias hesitated before picking it up. NEUWMESSAGG. Unknown SENDER. He opened the text. The war never ends. The Reaper is needed once more. Coordinates attached. Below the message was a string of numbers. Elias frowned. He recognized the pattern. It was an old military encryption code, one he hadn't seen since the Titanus War. Someone from his past was reaching out. Someone who knew exactly how to find him. The call of duty. The door to his room slid open. Caliph entered, now dressed in a formal dark blue robe trimmed with silver. His pale blue skin and amber eyes gave him an air of quiet authority beyond his years. The crest of the Zerithian Empire was embroidered on his chest. Hey, kid, Elias greeted him with a nod. Caliph smiled. I'm not really a kid anymore, Elias. Yeah, well, you still look like one to me. Caliph sat beside the bed. The council made it official today. They recognized me as the legitimate ruler of the Zerithian Empire. Good. Means fewer idiots trying to kill you. Not fewer, Caliph said, his smile fading. Just fewer from my family. Elias sighed. Family wars are the worst kind. Caliph leaned forward. The council asked me to stay here a few more weeks. Security's tight. They're still investigating the traitors who helped my uncle. Good. You'll be safer here, Elias said. The prince hesitated. And you? Elias showed him the encrypted coordinates. Caliph's eyes narrowed. That looks like old Titanus military code. It is, Elias confirmed. Whoever sent this knows me, and they know how to drag me back into trouble. You don't have to go. Elias smiled faintly. Yeah, I do. Destination: Karis Rift. 2 days later, Elias boarded a small, unregistered ship from an independent human shipping guild. The coordinates led him to the Karis Rift, a remote asteroid belt far beyond the Council's jurisdiction. The rift was a place of myths, a silent graveyard for old warships and forgotten experiments. The closer he got, the more his instincts screamed of danger. As his ship passed into the outer rim of the asteroid field, a beacon activated. A voice crackled over the comm. "Reaper, welcome back." Elias's heart skipped a beat. He knew that voice. "Admiral Corin Jast," Elias said. "I thought you were dead." The voice gave a low laugh. "I could say the same about you." The comm beeped, and a massive ship decloaked ahead of him. Its hull was black and angular, an old Titanus-class warcruiser with no markings. "Docking instructions sent," Jast said. "Let's talk." The Ghost Fleet. Elias stepped into the warcruiser's main hangar. The air smelled of cold metal and recycled oxygen. Armed soldiers watched him from the catwalks above. At the far end of the hangar, Admiral Corin Jast waited. Jast had aged since Elias last saw her. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, and the scar across her jaw was deeper than he remembered. Her eyes, though, were the same, sharp and unreadable. "Admiral," Elias greeted. "Commander Kane," she replied. "I'm not a commander anymore." "You don't get to resign from this war," Jast said. "Walk with me." They strode toward the control deck. Along the way, Elias noticed the ship's crew. They wore no insignias, no identifying marks. "Who are these people?" Elias asked. "Ghost Fleet," Jast answered. "We went dark after Titanus. The Council thought we disbanded. We didn't. We've been watching, waiting." "For what?" "For what's coming," Jast said. She stopped at a holomap display and activated it. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared. Several systems blinked red. "Your mistake saved the prince," Jast said. But it woke something older. Something worse. The map zoomed in on a region Elias didn't recognize. "This," Jast said, "is the Nyrek Expanse. It's empty on official charts. In reality, it's home to something ancient. Something that's been dormant until now." The display shifted, showing grainy footage of massive insect-like ships rising from black planets. "Nyrek Hive Fleet," Jast said. "They're waking up, and they see humanity, and every other species, as a resource to harvest." Elias exhaled slowly. "Hive fleets don't negotiate." "Exactly," Jast said. "Your little prince exposed Savrik's conspiracy, but the chaos weakened the Council's defenses. The Hive sees an opportunity." Elias rubbed his temples. "Let me guess, you want me to stop them." "You're the only one who understands what's coming," Jast said. "You've fought against impossible odds before. The Hive doesn't just kill, they consume entire worlds." "And your Ghost Fleet?" Elias asked. "We'll fight," Jast said. "But we need a ground team. Surgical strikes. Disrupt their coordination nodes." "Fine," Elias said. "But after this, I'm done for good." Jast smiled faintly. "You said that last time." Return to Earth. Elias returned to Earth the next day. He went straight to the Unity Council Tower. Security tried to stop him until Calith appeared. "Elias." Calith ran to him, concern on his face. "We need to talk," Elias said. They sat on a balcony overlooking the city. "The war's not over," Elias said. "The Nyrek Hive is waking up. If we don't stop them now, we'll all die." Calith's face paled. I thought we saved the galaxy." "We saved it from Savrik," Elias said. "The Hive is something worse, and the Council won't believe it until it's too late." Calith gripped the balcony rail. "What do we do?" "Not we," Elias said. "Me," You stay here, lead your people, and keep the council united. I'll go with the ghost fleet." Calith's eyes shone with unused tears. "But you saved me. I should go with you." Elias placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I didn't save you to throw you into another war. I saved you because you're the kind of leader we need. A leader who knows mercy. I'm just a soldier. Let me fight. You lead." Calith hugged him tightly. "Promise you'll come back." Elias hesitated. "I promise," he said. The legacy of a mistake. 3 weeks later, Elias stood on the bridge of the Ghost Fleet's flagship. The fleet gathered in the dark void near the Nyric expanse. The comm officer turned to Jast. "Incoming message from the hive." "Play it," Jast ordered. A grotesque alien face appeared on the screen, its mouth filled with needle-like teeth. "We see you, Reaper of Titanus." The creature hissed. "We remember your wars. We remember your cruelty. We are coming. The hive will devour your worlds. Your species will kneel." Elias stepped forward. "No," he said. "We don't kneel. We fight." The alien hissed and the transmission cut. Jast smirked. "A hive knows your name." "Good," Elias said, gripping his rifle. "Let's give them a reason to fear it." The fleet moved into formation, engines burning like stars. Elias Kane stood at the center, the human who once made a mistake and changed the galaxy forever.